Welcome back to another one of my videos. As always, I find these stories that I read to you from different subreddits on the Reddit website. And I always leave a link in the description. So that way, instead of watching gameplay through the video, you can read along if you would like to. That said, let's get into the video. What about Katie? I grew up with my sister living in a large house along with my mother and father. It was a big house, and was such fun to run around in with just me and my sister. We did everything together. We'd watch TV or just sit around with coloring books, build stuff with blocks, and sometimes even have her read stories to me. She would always be the last to leave my room at night and the first to be by my bedside when I would wake up. We were inseparable every day, and I couldn't imagine life without her at that time. Even when I would go to school, she would be the first person I'd run to just to talk about my day and all the activities I did. She would always listen to my every word. She kept me out of trouble and sometimes would be the trouble to pull little pranks on our parents. One day I woke up and I was kind of stunned to find she wasn't there to say good morning, Bug, like how she would always do. But that morning was different. I went to my parents asking where Katie was, and all they would say is, "I don't know, sweetie," which I found really odd. I started to feel scared for whatever reason, because she wasn't there, and I acted out in crying fits asking for Katie. "Where's Katie? I want Katie." When night time came around, she wasn't there to put me to sleep, and of course I acted out again and again. This went on for weeks until it was time my parents would take me to a child psychologist. I kept asking about Katie, no matter who I talked to, because she was my world and my everything. She was my safety. But it turns out Katie didn't exist at all. But I knew she was real, no matter how much they tried to convince me she wasn't. I thought back to all the times me and Katie played, watched TV, colored in my books, and even read stories at night in my bed. All those times I asked my parents about Katie. That whole time they thought I was just making up an imaginary friend and played along with it whenever I would mention or acknowledge her, but they were just doing so to keep my imagination sharp. They had started to suspect that I was developing a type of schizophrenia, hence why the child psychologist was an option. For years, I've seen the psychologist, and I told them about Katie, and how she looked, talked, her age, and all the basics, but over time I somehow grew to accept that she was just make-believe like they said she was. Then I got older. I eventually grew out of the phase and forgot about Katie altogether up until I became an adult. One afternoon, I was sorting through old junk in my parents' house when I came across an old drawing of me and Katie that I had made. Sorry. We were holding hands and reading a book as I looked at all these memories came flooding back. I remembered Katie, and I felt a sense of comfort overwhelm me as I sat down looking at that drawing in the garage, and that's when I started to realize something. I took out my phone and looked up some old town records along with the address of the house I grew up in. It turns out that 10 years before we had moved into this house, there was another house that burned down. My mother and her 2 kids made it out safely, but one child didn't. 9-year-old Katie died in the fire, trapped in her own room. I remember always wondering why Katie's face was pale and red on one side of her face, hair stringy and wet, but never questioned out loud because I was naive and thought that's just how she was because she was always around me for as long as I can remember. I wasn't schizophrenic, wasn't delusional or crazy, none of those things they said I was. She wasn't even an imaginary friend of mine that I just made up. Katie was a ghost who I thought was my sister that whole time. There are days when I go to visit my mother since my dad passed. I'll be alone walking down those long hallways and I'll feel a little hand holding mine. I'd stop and close my eyes and whisper, "Hello, sister." And we'd walk into a room, and just like that, she'd be gone. I like to think she's watching over my mother when I'm not around. It brings a comfort to know that Katie still cares and is still there. The guest house in the forest. Me and my best friend went to a guest house in the forest. When we first set foot in it, I could feel the energy, and I didn't like this feeling at all. There were no other people than us and our families and the staff. We were staying there for just one night before leaving again. We had dinner outside, and then everyone went to their rooms. It was almost 1 a.m. Sorry. When we went into our room and started to change. That's when everything began. I went to the bathroom because I had to use the toilet. I locked the door and did what I had to do until my best friend, let's call her Kaya, knocked on the door. "Stop knocking, bitch," I yelled, smiling. But then I heard her talk. "Alex, you need to get the fuck out because I'm fucking scared," she said. Of course, I instantly caught the worry in her voice and unlocked the door. She was standing in front of me, only in her bra and shorts. She was mid-changing. "There's something out there, on the balcony," she pointed out through the big window. "Kaya, there's nothing out there," I laughed it off. "No, you don't listen to me. I swear that I saw a woman on the roof and there was some weird liquid in her hair, just like blood." I didn't believe her, since she used to scare me like that before. So I went to the window and looked outside. There was a red light from the sign of the hotel, so I couldn't really see anything at first. After a while, though, I saw something on the roof of the balcony. There was something that looked like a blonde woman lying lifeless on the roof. The liquid really looked like blood, but I still thought my vision is playing tricks on me, and I went outside. Seeing it up close, I screamed and went back in. "Did you see it? Is it the same?" Kaya asked. I just took her hand and went into the bathroom, locking the door afterwards. We were scared. Kaya tried calling her mom, but she was in the other wing of the house, and her grandmother, the only one close to us, didn't pick up the phone. I didn't call my parents because they would tell us that this is bullshit and go to bed. "You know, that might be a skinwalker," Kaya said, scared. "A what?" This was the first time I ever heard of skinwalkers. She quickly explained to me that they were creatures living in the forest which could take different forms of humans and animals, and they were not friendly at all. After hearing her explanation, I realized we couldn't sleep in the bathroom, so both of us got out of our phones recording. When I got to the window, I couldn't see anything. It was gone. I opened the door. Kaya tried to stop me from doing so, but I still did. I went to the place where the blonde woman was, but she was gone. There was only a small trace of blood on the roof, sliding down like it just gave up. Her grandma heard us and told us to go to sleep, and that if she heard anything, she would come to our room. We fell asleep after 3 hours, scared because it might come back for us. In the morning, the trace of blood was still there, but without sign of the skinwalker. Finally, we managed to leave soon, going away from that scary guest house in the forest. If you liked that video, then like the video. If you're going to bed soon, sweet dreams. And if you have a full day ahead of you, I hope it goes well. Thank you for taking your time to spend on watching one of my videos on my channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.